About this. The state of Texas is demanding the federal government investigate the origin of COVID.
That's right. We saw a state lawmaker in Texas, Briscoe Cain. He's a fiery, firebrand, young conservative guy. And he just introduced a resolution that I think is a really good idea, demanding that Congress actually do its job and start investigating these payments that we now know were made through a pass-through organization illegally under the NIH to something called EcoHealth Alliance. And that money then went to the Wuhan lab. And it certainly looks like what it was going towards was carrying out gain-of-function research, which was illegal up until 2017. These payments were made in 2014. And we need to know, did this actually contribute to the formulation of the coronavirus and the subsequent leak of it? And if it did, what protocols are we putting in place to ensure this never happens again? Because one protocol I can tell you we haven't put in place is not giving EcoHealth Alliance any more money. They just got another $3 million from the Department of Defense last week.
Yeah, I don't know what they think they're going to get. I mean, if they're calling in Dr. Anthony Fauci, the guy is never going to tell the truth, and he actually seems frustrated, like, how dare these peasant Republicans dare question him?
That's exactly been his attitude. And I will say, if it weren't for Senator Rand Paul continuing to push and push and push and challenge the official narrative, and if it weren't for the White Coat Waste Project, where I'm a fellow, that happened to be looking into these kinds of issues because they're opposed to torturous animal research that is funded by taxpayers in these labs, we would never have known the half of it. Fauci and his ilk were going to keep suppressing this information that we have gotten. They were using disinformation boards. They were pressuring Twitter and Facebook to censor anybody who challenged their official narrative that this came from eating a bat, which, come on. And so I really think that it's important that Congress actually push these guys out, do their actual job, start investigating, do a thorough look at how much money was going to Wuhan, what was the research they were doing there, and did it contribute to creating the largest pandemic we've ever seen in history? And, all signs continue to point to that being what happened. And we can't say that until we actually can get our hands on some of this. A lot of it's classified. So it does have to be Congress that comes in and ultimately proves whether or not this is what happened. But we keep getting more indications, including an Inspector General report last week that shows that Fauci and the NIH did not carry out proper oversight of the grants they were handing out to this lab and to others.
There's a lot of tough talk about China and Taiwan, but all this time it's been like, when it comes to questioning China. It seems like there's just one too many people in Washington that really don't want to ask China tough questions. And we also know, like Fauci, they're not going to answer.
Well, not only do they not want to ask them tough questions, they seem to kind of bow down to them. We've gotten more internal reports showing that Fauci and his right-hand man went over to study what China was doing when the coronavirus first broke out and wanted to implement what they were doing. If they had gotten their way, we would have had the very, very strict totalitarian type lockdowns we've seen in China, where they are literally having people burn alive in buildings because they're locking them inside because they have the stupid coronavirus. So they not only don't want to challenge them, they kind of idolize them. And I think it's because you have a bunch of commies running around our government who want that kind of style implementation here. And so, yeah, I think that that's a huge problem, and we need to have a come to Jesus about it. I'm not somebody who rants and raves about China and trade and tariffs. I tend to like most of these things. I'm a free market person. But when it comes to this, they are a brutal communist dictatorship. We know they suppress information. We know they disappear people. We know they've scrubbed their records from this lab and had been working to suppress information about concerns around the Wuhan lab for years before the coronavirus actually came about. So I think that we've got to get tough on this subject. And again, it's not just so that we can have answers. It's not just so that we can hold people accountable who were responsible for this if they were. It's so that we can make sure that these same things don't happen again, because the spending has not slowed. Our government is continuing to carry out research on animals, gain-of-function type research that's very dangerous and unnecessary, and it's continuing to give money, tons of taxpayer dollars, to groups that are allegedly nonprofits that are way too cozy with the government and, again, have very little oversight or any accountability for what they're carrying out.
One of my favorite parts of all of this is listening to Democrats scream and yell, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and the rest of them, about the profits of the pharmaceutical companies, and Biden too. Let's see. You gave them money to research something, then you bought it from them with our money, forced us to take it, and then you bought it for countries around the world, and you're wondering why you funneled billions of dollars to them, and now you're upset that they profited? I mean, they kind of now know, like, well, they're raising the price of the vaccine because you mandated it. How about this? Don't mandate it. Let it float on the free market.
Right. It amazes me that Democrats' big crusade over the past year or two has been antitrust, right? They're constantly wanting to come in and use the government power to break up monopolies
Except
and
for
break up
Pfizer.
companies. Yeah, except for all the ones that they're funding behind the scenes. And really, that's the only time you actually do have monopolies is thanks to government grants and regulations and special favors that they're doing with their left hand while they're calling for antitrust with their right. So they're just total hypocrites. I'm tired of the circus show. This is what they said in Rome, bread and circuses. It's meant to entertain the people and distract them while they're carrying on what they really want to do. And what they really want to do is continue enriching their lobbyists and the corporations that turn around and fund their campaigns and give them all the money for their second and third houses. So I think they're just disingenuous hacks as a whole. And you're right to call out that COVID is not the only forefront where they are just completely